I am Ashley Hayek. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer for America First Policy Institute, and we're so grateful that you could join us this evening to talk about the education freedom revolution. We have some amazing guests joining us this evening to really dig deep into this issue, which is so important to parents. We'll be hearing from Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, a former teacher herself, who's really an expert on this policy area and has been working across the country to move forward education freedom policy, as well as Speaker of the Tennessee State Legislature, who will be joining us a little bit later, Cameron Sexton. School choice is a top priority in the state of Tennessee this year. And then, of course, we'll have a wonderful mother, Sharon Sedlar from Pennsylvania, who's been a top expert as well, just fighting for school choice in Pennsylvania and beyond. And so we're so lucky to have everybody join us today. But first, I want to really dig deep into just the explosion of parents' rights as it pertains to education. This is School Choice Week, National School Choice Week. And Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith has been working relentlessly since she first walked into AFPI on school choice and education freedom. So, Dr. Laurie, maybe you can share with us, your experience so far. I'm a mom of 5 kids. We would love to have more school choice opportunity in the state of Virginia. We've seen, especially because of COVID, the National Teachers Unions wanting to mask our kids, indoctrinate them, keep them out of schools, radicalize them with their woke agendas. And ultimately at AFPI, we believe that parents should have ultimate control over their child's education. So your expertise, Laurie, why don't you share what you've learned and what you've been working on with AFPI, America First Policy Institute?
Yes, thank you so much, Ashley. Such an important topic, and I'm so happy that we're focused on this today and really trying to raise awareness around school choice. As you mentioned, I've been an educator in public schools in the past, and I have been a longtime educator in the policy field here over 30 years now, and school choice revolution, as you call it, is the biggest reform I've seen in my career in any point in time. We've had little small interventions that have helped, but this is the biggest effort I've seen to pass in public education or in states. So it's growing across the nation. You mentioned some of these issues with schools that really helped elevate this topic, but the school closures that occurred as a result of COVID-19 had a huge impact on our students' outcomes. We are now at a 30-year low in our students' reading and math scores for 4th and 8th graders across the United States. And in addition to those two topics, really parental rights, as you've mentioned, have really been trampled on by school boards, administrators, other teachers unions, as you've mentioned. And it feels like education's just really being politicized from my educator perspective. And parents are really seeking ways of how to keep their kids safe, how to find a good environment for the best learning environment for their children. And the good news is in 2023, there were 42 states that proposed legislation to create or expand school choice. And a record 20 states expanded school choice to some extent, whether it be open enrollment or expansion of funding. And we had 10 states now since the beginning of when I started working with AFPI. 10 states have universal school choice now, meaning any child in that state can attend a school of their choice. So really great to see that momentum and really big numbers when you look at the number of children that can actually be served. And more states are interested in doing it this year. There's a new poll that came out in December of 2023 that shows that 76% of voters polled are more likely to vote for a candidate who supports school choice. And that was 77% of Democrats, 86% of Republicans, and 67% of independents. So there's a big interest in, the political reality for legislators that want to be reelected, that they need to respond, and school choice is one way to do that. And just such an important time. And that's what I love about the combination of my background in education and then now understanding how politics and policy is actually implemented in states. And so the data is very clear and school choice works. Parents have higher satisfaction when they get to choose their child's education, and we got to be part of some of that in states, and that's the favorite part of the work I get to do. I know you've all heard a lot about Arkansas and the LEARNS Act, and children in Arkansas, actually kindergartners in this school year will be the first class where every kindergarten student in the state of Arkansas will have access to school choice. And it won't matter, in the past it's been related to eligibility of how much your parents make or what zip code you live in. So big opportunities in Arkansas. North Carolina is another state that expanded their opportunity scholarship program for all students. So previously only low income students could take advantage of it, and now they've expanded that for all students in the state. Iowa was another great state. Their universal school choice is a 3-year phased-in approach. So over the next 3 years, they will be able to enter into full universal school choice, all students. Pennsylvania is another state. The governor signed House Bill 301, which was amazing, and expanded funding for education improvement tax credits and the Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credit program. So that expanded funding will allow more families to apply for those scholarships. Texas is one state that was not able to pass their bill yet. Their governor's called 3 special sessions and is fully committed to passing that in Texas. And I think more will come in the coming years. So at America First, what we do is that we have a group of policy experts and practitioners, and we have former governors and former legislators, former public school teachers like myself. And we really bring together the policy and the advocacy organizations in a state. You'd be surprised how often a state does not work together or sit at the same table when they're all advocating for the same thing. So I think that's a strength that we bring to the table, to bring parents in with those groups. And I'll talk a little more later about it, but we have some amazing resources on our website. We have high impact fact sheets on many states. So you can log into our website, you can see what school choice options are available in a state, what are the student outcomes in that state. We do digital campaigns, we do geo-targeted media campaigns, targeted op-eds, and we really work to engage groups and amplify messaging. So it's really magical, the combination of strong policy and these advocacy efforts. So we have a parent who's here today who's going to talk to us about school choice and can really help students who are struggling in traditional public schools. Sharon is from Pennsylvania. She has 6 children. Sharon, I read that there were nearly planned this week alone for National School Choice Week, 900 events are planned in Pennsylvania happening this week, including open house events at schools, school fairs, homeschool information sessions. And, Pennsylvania has some school choice, not universal yet, but I do want to point out in Pennsylvania, I did a little quick scan of the data. In Pennsylvania, only 34% of your 4th graders are reading proficiently, and low-income children in Pennsylvania, 4th graders are 31 points lower than middle to high-income students in their reading scores. So major declines have happened across the country. They've also happened in Pennsylvania, and I think that's probably a little shocking to you, maybe not, Sharon, but would you mind sharing what you've learned about the impact of school choice and choosing what's best for your child and how that impacted your family?
Absolutely. Thanks. Those are amazing statistics. That's the detail and is important when we have these conversations in education choice policy, because it's not just, it's about education choice. It's about literacy. It's about math capabilities, and it's about making sure every child is provided with the best educational opportunity that they can get in their area, in that state. And I understand, being a mom to 6 girls, every single one has their own personality, talents, needs, And because of that, you can't fit them in a box. You can't say, we're going to give you this one option and that's all you get. Make the most of it. My kids have had to use private education, public education, cyber charter, and I actually have one child going into homeschool next school year because that's what she needs at the time. I've had children who have had special education needs, gifted programming, medical needs because of post-concussion syndrome. But I want to tell you about my youngest. So Virginia is 13 years old now, and she's doing well now. But that's because we had the options and the choice to remedy a dysfunctional education environment. When she was in kindergarten and first grade, she did amazing. She loved school. She loved her teachers. She loved meeting with her friends and learning every day. But in second grade, something changed. And she started dragging her feet. And she didn't want to go to school. She had nightmares, stomach aches, headaches, started sleeping with me. And we parents know that when you have a child that's exhibiting those behaviors, it's because there's something wrong. She would come home from the school day just exhausted and wanting nothing but my presence and to be close to me. So it was obvious to me that the school environment was harmful. I tried to work with the school district. We tried to remedy the situation. I didn't want to uproot her. It wasn't a situation I took lightly in terms of changing her education model. But after 7 months of physical and emotional manifestations of the difficulty she was having, she was standing in my dining room one morning and she apologized to me, my 7-year-old. And she said, "Mom, I'm so sorry, but I can't do it anymore. I can't go back there. Can I please stay home with you?" And I just saw her crumbling. I saw my child disappearing. And I told her that she didn't have to go back, and she has not. And even though she still can't be in a formal education environment, she has come a long way. She's returned to that happy, healthy child that she used to be, and her academics have improved. So there are options for children to be able to get back to where they need to be if your area, if your district, if your state allows them to happen.
That's really an incredible story, and it really speaks to Laurie's point too of making sure that parents do have control over their child's education, because no one knows what your child needs more than you do as a parent. And so the fact that you could recognize that you took action, and ever since then have continued to fight for all parents is really remarkable, Sharon. And we're so grateful that there's moms like you who are willing to do that. I want to bring in Speaker Sexton here from Tennessee. Laurie was also talking about the different governors and the different states that have fully embraced school choice, and talk about such a stark contrast between a state like North Carolina, where you had a governor who literally declared a state of emergency over the legislature passing school choice and parents' rights, versus a state like Tennessee, where you have a governor who has said, this is my number one priority, and an incredible legislature led by Speaker Sexton, where you guys have really been on the cutting edge of a lot of parental rights. I know Florida gets a lot of credit, but you all have been fighting for parents and families very much too. So I'd love to hear exactly what Tennessee plans on doing. You kicked off your legislative cycle. This is a top issue, obviously, for you all. We're so grateful you could join us. Thank you so much. We've loved working with you. So maybe you can give us a peek into what you all are working on in Tennessee.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. We're looking to bring in universal choice to the state of Tennessee and allow an education freedom scholarship, which is outside the normal funding level of our K through 12 education. And so to the point earlier, I think there's a lot of people, and I guess North Carolina governor the same way, there's a lot of people who are afraid to allow parents to have the choice. And a lot of times that choice deals with academics. Sometimes it deals with other things going on in the school that may not be the right fit for that child. And so the thing is, it's hard to understand why so many people are just opposed to allowing parents to have the choice that makes the decision that's best for their child. You hear all the time people talk about how this is going to destroy public education, but that's not the case. You've seen it in other states. You've seen it in Washington, D.C. It actually enhances public education. It actually brings public education up and higher. But when they talk about it, it seems like a lot of people, especially those on the left, talk about it's okay if wealthy people leave public schools and go to private schools. But as soon as you start talking about trying to help everybody, especially those who don't have the means to make that decision and make it affordable and allow them to use their tax dollars to do what's best for their child, all of a sudden they come back and say, you're going to destroy public education. I think that's a total negative argument. I don't think it holds any weight whatsoever. What we have learned through COVID and other things is that parents want to be able to make the decisions that's best for their child. So here in Tennessee, we have a bill that's going to propose, and hopefully we'll get to universal choice on the scholarship and lay it out and gradually build it in. It takes a while to get there, but we're hopeful. We have the governor. We have a lot of members who are willing to fight for this, and I think that we'll get there very soon.
You brought up a really good point, Speaker Sexton, about some of the dissenters of education freedom is about, it's going to jeopardize public schools, or there's a lot of conversation about how there's a fear of funding that'll take money away from the public schools if you give parents a choice. This is really common in rural parts of states. We've seen that in Georgia, in Missouri, in Texas. I'm curious, is that something that you see being an issue in Tennessee? And if so, how do you respond to some of those questions from people who are concerned about public funding?
Yeah, you hear it all the time. That's the first argument that they always throw out. And what you've seen in other states, it doesn't destroy public education. And Governor Lee is right. You can do both. It's not an either or conversation. You can fully fund and continue to promote public education at the same time, have choice and allow parents to have choice. That's how you improve. Look at the U.S. Post Office. What happened when FedEx came in? When FedEx came into business, they weren't even doing priority mail. They forced the government to do something different. And so when you have a status quo or a school system that knows that 80% or more of their parents can't afford, or there's nowhere else to send their child, how much are they going to listen to the parents? And that's what you saw in COVID. That's what you've seen in other areas. And so having parents that have choice holds the school systems accountable, but it also makes them come up, and it's not going to destroy public education. If anything, it's going to enhance it, as all the other states and everything that has been out there talking about it. And so being scared of allowing parents to have that choice is ridiculous in my mind. And so we just need to do a better job of communicating, overcoming the objections, whether they're false premises or not, and continuing to push forward, because parents want what's best for their child, and this is their tax dollars. I think a lot of times people will say, well, that's the government's money that's going to public schools. You have to remember, that's the parents' tax dollars that they're spending that goes into their state and the state sends out. So if the school system is not working for them or for their child, why should they not be able to take some of their tax dollars and go put it somewhere else? It seems reasonable to me.
That's right. It's almost like you're paying twice, right? So you're paying your taxes for the local public schools, but then you're also having to pay for that private school or that extra tutoring or whatever additional services that you need, which, is also really makes it really difficult for working families. What are some of the things that people watching can do? What can America First do to help in Tennessee to make sure that, we educate and get this legislation across the finish line?
Well, I appreciate that. I think the most is continuing having the conversations and talking about that you can do both. You can have a quality public school system and choice. You can look at Florida. Florida has the most choice of anybody. And there's been recent rankings that they're the number one state in America for education attainment. And they spend about the same per pupil as Tennessee. So there is a component that choice does make the school systems better. Not just money, but choice. And so one is delivering the message, two is being consistent, and three is just talking to people and letting them understand that why are we so afraid to allow parents to make the decision that's best for their child. And so if we allow parents to do that, we will all win. That child will win. And usually the first thing that starts when they make that difference is that child all of a sudden, as you heard earlier, decides and says, I want to go to school now. I'm interested in going to school now. I want to read. I want to read books. I want to do a lot of stuff. They are back to being engaged. And so giving the parents the capability to get their child back engaged in an education that fits them is important that we need to do. So I appreciate anything that you can do to continue to spread that word.
Absolutely. We are so grateful that you could join us today, and we'll continue to look at and keep an eye out for all the great work that you're doing in the state of Tennessee. And we'll let you get back to your business for the day. But thank you so much for your time. We're really grateful, and we're really excited to see what Tennessee plans to roll out.
Thank you.
Laurie, I'll turn it back to you. I know you and Sharon were talking about, the implications of, school choice and education freedom and personalized education. One of the things that Speaker Sexton brought up specifically was the need for that competition in the school system, and how Florida did so well. Another reason Florida did so well is their schools were open, right? And you mentioned the test scores that we've seen. All of this together, I think, just provides such a perfect opportunity for all of the states to move forward and just explode with opportunities for parents. So, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about how specifically those school districts can benefit from having more options for kids. I know sometimes you can use some of that funding for extra tutoring or extra school supplies or things that maybe aren't just going to a different school. It's a little bit nuisance, but I think when we talk about education freedom, it's not just about a charter school or a private school. It has so many meanings just beyond, just school choice. And I'd love for you to be able to just explain that, and then, maybe get some of Sharon's feedback too.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of the story. I just marvel still at how we're having the same discussions over the same misinformation in states, that the data is showing something so completely different. But there has not been one study that shows that a public school completely fell apart as a result of school choice. And so I always sort of marvel at how that's still part of the discussion. But, the test scores and everything that's been said already, they definitely show that families are better satisfied. The students academically, there was a study, the NAEP scores that I mentioned across the nation of just private schools, and specifically they looked at Catholic schools, and that was the only group of students whose test scores actually improved. And that's not to say that one school's better than another or one system, but it does shed to light that when parents have more choice, the students do better. Smaller class size, better interventions, meets the needs of the whole family in one way or another. I think Arizona has a lot of good data as well, since they've had school choice for so long. That there's also been some studies on rural school districts and the myth of, well, they don't have any options, so school choice doesn't benefit children in rural school areas of the United States. When in fact, I take Mississippi, for instance, where I live. There may not be another private school in some of the small towns in the delta of Mississippi, but school choice allows for that school district in a district a little further away to partner with some of the bigger city school districts in sports. It allows open enrollment. It allows, if the parent chooses, what if I work 30 miles away and I want to take my child with me to that district where I'm located? It just opens the doors for lots of opportunities to make it work better for that family. And it raises the bar for all public schools and private schools at the same time. So that's where I think America First could really help. I think school districts, having worked in many in my career, feel very hesitant of change. That means you're going to take children. In any bill that we've helped pass in any state, there were not thousands of children that left the district all on the same day, and then the school had all these problems. It just doesn't happen. It balances out. And I think we have a lot of information that could help share with teachers and districts and others that, we could help message that a little better for those rural school districts and parents. Sharon, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about how that impacted your daughter and your other children. I imagine with 6 children, meeting the needs of each one of them is probably very different. How they, no 2 kids are the same. I know that from my teaching experience. Do you want to speak to that, Sharon?
Right. Well, and clearly my children had their obstacles or their challenges or their needs. And who better to advocate for their child than the parent? We know when they're struggling. We know those little signs at home. We know what snacks they need after a rough day. We know when something's off. And so sometimes it's not obvious as to what the struggling is. It doesn't necessarily show up in the grades. Sometimes it's an emotional component or a psychological component, like it was with my daughter, where her difficulties that were brought on by the district education that she was being provided just created this whole domino effect that we're still contending with, 7 years down the road, 7 years later. And I don't know what the future holds for her. It's quite possible she may rejoin a traditional environment, be able to go into college, because that's what I'm thinking at this point. What are we going to do for college? What are we going to do for technical school? What is her work life going to be? What is she going to be able to do? So what happens with those kids when they're in K-12 can adversely or positively affect the rest of their lives. And that's not to say that there aren't district schools who do an amazing job, because there are. But for those children that need different, they shouldn't be penalized by a system that won't accommodate them, that won't accommodate their needs, especially in today's world. The education system designed 100 years ago is not the one that we need to be in place today. Every single day, I work with families who are having difficulties within the education system. And I'll just share a couple of examples with you. I have one family where the mom was jailed for 27 days for truancy charges because the district refused to acknowledge her homeschool affidavit. I have another family who have been advocating for their autistic and dyslexic son for 8 years. That seventh grader has a kindergarten reading level right now. And the only way this family can seek relief and see improvement on his reading skills is via an out-of-state online vendor that they pay for out of pocket, which, by the way, they cannot afford to do, but they're willing to sacrifice so much for their child. There's a family that has 3 autistic children who has a school 10 minutes away that would really well serve those children. But because of residential boundaries, they have to go 20 minutes away to a school with lesser programs for their children. And one of the most recent stories that I've had come to me, and a situation we're dealing with to this day, is a child who moved halfway in the school year. They had a living situation. The school district, when they found out their new address, said, "You can't go here anymore. Go to your new district." This child was on honor roll. She had friends. She had been doing well for years. She went to this other education option, and after trying for months, never quite recovered, and actually was hospitalized for anxiety and depression recently. And we're still fighting to try to find and secure an education option she feels comfortable with. So kids need education options for a variety of reasons, whether it's safety, whether, bullying, whether it's academics, whether it's special needs. And reaching out to the Department of Education or education advocates or even legal recourses within our state, I have found very lackluster, if any, results. They are either disinterested or they're overwhelmed. But suffice it to say, the system is stacked against the very people it's supposed to serve. And that's the children and families in the United States, and certainly in Pennsylvania. We know that options can be provided to these children at a fraction of the cost of traditional district education. Yet there's such a fight against offering these children our options. There is more of a focus on supporting the system instead of our children, and that needs to change. So I and parents like me and advocates, grassroots advocates across the United States, we link arms. We're together on this. We are fighting with each other. We are growing in numbers, and we're going to continue to do it and join that school choice wave until every single child in the United States has the same education freedom that's been so successful elsewhere.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for doing that and for being a part of that fight. I know AFPI is just so honored to be able to work with so many organizations like American Federation for Children and Texas Public Policy Foundation. EdChoice was another one that you've mentioned earlier, but there's so many great groups that are really working united and coordinating. And that's what we need to do more of, I think, as a movement, as moms, to come together. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your very personal story. There's, I think no worse feeling as a parent than just not being able to give your kid or help your child the way that they need to be helped. And so to take that power is just so commendable. So thank you, Sharon, for everything you do. Dr. Laurie, is there anything else that, people watching this can do to take action? I know there is the parents.americafirstpolicy.com website, which is a great website for America First parents. Any final thoughts that you have that you can share with folks watching tonight?
Yes, we have a lot of great resources. I just want to add a little bit to what Sharon just talked about with the parent work. It's just so important, and there's so many ways parents can be involved. But with this 30-year low test scores across the United States, major interventions need to be made. We can't pretend that's not happening. And to overcome not knowing how to read by third grade and being able to be successful in the rest of your school career life and into adulthood, there's some major things that have to change at the national level to support those families. It is an emergency, and it is time for legislators and other policymakers to really be focused on students, as Sharon said, and not so much on the institution of schooling. So when you look at it that way, it's just so perfectly clear to me. But we have an amazing website, the Parents First website. And one way parents can be involved in the public school system is to engage with the school board. So our Parents First website is the only online directory of every school district in the United States and their school board members' names and contact information. So parents could go there. They can find out when the school board meetings are. You can find out who your school board members are and attend those meetings and get involved and speak publicly at your school. We also have what I call progress reports on school choice. I didn't want to call it a grade necessarily on how far every state has come in school choice and where a parent can get more information about those scholarships if they're available and different legislator information. We have fact sheets on every state telling you that data I shared about Pennsylvania. We have that on several states right now that tells you what your test scores are for 4th and 8th graders. And it's broken down by demographics that I think is really helpful for everyone to use in your advocacy efforts in your state. So getting involved, using all the research is on our AmericaFirstPolicy.com website, and you just go under the Center for Education Opportunity, and then of course the America First Parents and our social media work. So reach out anytime. We are here to help, and we have a lot of great resources that could save parents and policymakers a lot of time and great tools for the work ahead. So Ashley, anything else?
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening to the Education Freedom Revolution webinar this evening. And make sure you sign up on parents.americafirstpolicy.com. It's plural, parents.americafirstpolicy.com. We'd love to keep you up to date on the most latest information coming out on this particular issue. And thank you, Sharon, again, for being such a fighter. And Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, you are truly amazing with everything that you've managed to do, running from state to state, testifying on legislation, and really being a leader in this industry and on policy. So thank you both very much, and I hope you all have a